What skills are middle managers expected to have but are very rarely taught?
In every organization, there's one group holding the whole operation together. Not the top, not the bottom, the middle. Today, three of the sharpest minds in middle management step up to the mic. Jeff Siegel, Lisa Wood, and Sally Foley-Lewis. Each brings a different lens, one shared mission. Decode what it really takes to lead from the middle with confidence, clarity, and impact. Same questions, three perspectives. Get ready for insight that cuts through the noise and goes straight to the operational heartbeat of your organization. Let's dive in.
I think there are three incredibly important skills that middle managers almost never get trained on. The first one is managing up. The most important relationship for your career, for getting your job done, for understanding what you need to do, for getting ahead is the relationship between you and your boss. And so the skills that you need to, managing up is a hard thing to do. It's something you have to learn how to do, and we never train people how to do it. You often learn this from, a mentor or watching how your boss does it, or just trial and error. Wouldn't it be much better if we actually taught middle managers at some point, how do you manage your boss? How do you lead upwards? And this doesn't mean giving your boss feedback, which is sometimes how it's misinterpreted. This is like how you show up. Do you walk into a room with recommendations? Do you show up when you're asking for help, not saying, hey, I don't know what to do, but hey, this is what I've tried, and here's where I'm stuck, and here's what I need you to do. If you can learn how to manage up, you will be such a much more effective middle manager, not only for yourself, but for how you lead your team. The second one, I think that's so important, that is, I think, we try to train people on this, but they just don't seem to understand, or they just don't do it right, is giving feedback, and the ability to give feedback in a very, at a very, very specific level. Here's what you did wrong. Here's what I need to see in the future, and here's how that's going to help you achieve your goals, is really, really powerful. But even more important than, sort of correcting people when they get something wrong, is people need to learn to actually catch people doing stuff right. How do you praise people or recognize people when they do something well? And that could be something small, but the more you praise people for doing the behaviors you're looking for, the more of those behaviors you'll get. If you wait until the very end of the year to give feedback, when you're doing end of year reviews or whatever, you lose all this opportunity to sort of get your team to function better, to increase their capacity to do more. The last one, I think, that's so important that nobody seems to train anybody to do, is politics. And everybody thinks that politics in the office place is sort of a dirty word, but it's not. I mean, politics is something that human beings have, do all the time. I always joke that people have been playing politics since the cave people were trying to get the choicest parts of the woolly mammoth. Politics is reality. Politics is understanding that everybody in the company has sort of similar incentives, but they don't have exactly the same incentives. Their bosses are telling them that, thing A, B, and C is a priority, and your boss is telling you that X, Y, and Z are a priority. In order to get those things in alignment, you have to understand and sort of, do some of those things that we call politics. And you don't have to do it in a negative way. It doesn't have to be kind of a slimy thing. It can be a very positive thing, because you have stopped to understand what is the other person's incentives, what's driving them.
This is a good one. I think middle managers are expected to handle a huge amount, which requires many different skills, and which, yes, some are organically grown through role progression, time in business, various different experiences. But there is also a requirement for some of these skills to be developed with direct formal learning and assistance and support. I think people, and this is relevant, I think, to any level of management, are often promoted into senior positions because they're good at their job, but they're then suddenly expected to lead people, influence decisions, be strategic, be operational, be a deliverer and a doer, and also manage pressure from all sides. And I think that is such a huge demand on an individual, and too often the skills that are required to really tackle and address that successfully are just not taught. So I would say the top three for me are the first one being influencing. I think influencing without authority. So middle managers have to get things done through people they do not manage and speak up to senior leaders without damaging relationships. So that takes confidence, judgment, and I would say clear communication. But most people are expected to learn all of that on the job, through the job. They're very really rarely given direction around that. I think the second thing here out of my top three is translating strategy into reality. And I think there's two parts to this, because actually I found as a middle manager, I was expected to be strategic, and it was often a demand placed on me around being more strategic. But that's a juggle when you are also being operational and switching between those two different mindsets. But I think let's talk about that, translating strategy into reality. So senior leaders talk about direction and targets, but middle managers have to make that make sense every day. They need to interpret the information, explain the why, and tell a clear story so their teams know what it means for them. That is a communication skill, and I think that's very rarely taught. I think that's expected often, and that is one area that I think middle managers really have to find their own pathway through. So then the third thing here in my top three is managing pressure while staying steady for everybody else. You know, middle managers sit in the middle of expectations from above and emotion from below. They're expected to stay calm, make decisions, and support their team even when they feel uncertain themselves. That requires strong self-management. And again, most people are never shown how to do that. There is not enough focus, priority, and development around emotional intelligence, self-management, emotional resilience. You know, those real like psychological skills, because fundamentally when you're in this middle layer and if you're expecting to progress to a senior level, how you lead, how you show up in yourself, that impact you have on all the people around you is crucial, not just for their success and preservation, but for your own. So the gap here is not ability for me, it's development. Middle managers are expected to influence, translate, and stay steady under pressure, but are often left to figure it all out by themselves. And I think when organisations teach these skills, confidence grows and performance follows.
What's been shared here already with Lisa and Jeff is incredibly real. And if you are a middle manager listening and watching this, you're probably thinking, yes, all of that at the same time. Because we've heard about managing up and feedback and politics. We've heard about influencing, especially without any authority, translating strategy, and, staying steady under pressure. So let me build on that with three more that sit right underneath all of that. And the first is a very practical one, and that's delegation. And not just handing tasks over. We don't do drive-by delegating, but truly letting go. And middle managers are expected to deliver results through others. Yet they're very rarely taught how to delegate effectively and fully and with confidence and structure. So many are still wired to being the doer. And I think it's about, yes, you're doing, but you're not doing what you used to do. It's a different kind of doing. And no one really teaches them how to assess that capability, to match the task, to step back without stepping away. We want to check in on people, not check people. So delegation is a fundamental skill that is very rarely taught. It's expected that we know how to do it. The second one is judgment. Now, because in the middle, there's rarely a perfect answer because you rarely have all the information. You're constantly deciding, what matters most, what can wait, what has to be escalated, what you need to absorb right now. And those decisions are, they're happening fast and they're often without, as I said before, all the information. So that's not just experience, that's actually stepping further into wisdom and judgment. And that needs to be developed, and it needs to be nurtured through ongoing coaching and support and development. And then the third one is what I believe ties everything together, because you're doing everything quite often simultaneously, is integration. None of these skills show up in isolation. You're influencing while you're navigating politics. You're delegating while managing pressure. You're translating strategy while you're managing up. And in the middle of all of that, you're expected to create clarity for everyone else. So that's the sense making, and that's the integrating that goes with it. That's taking complexity and noise and competing priorities and turning it into something simple, clear, and actionable. Simple. So when we ask what skills that middle managers need and are very rarely taught, it's not just a list as such. It's probably the ability of an organization to see that we need to bring them all together in real time and help them be applied in the real environment, which means there is pressure. And that's maybe something we can't teach, but we can stand beside and coach and mentor and support. And I think that makes a massive difference, because the middle matters.
You've just heard from 3 leaders who have dedicated their careers to strengthening the heartbeat of every organization, the middle. Jeff Siegel brings more than 2 decades across global food, grocery, and restaurant giants, and a mission to build better workplaces from the inside out. He's a coach, author of The Middle Matters, and co-founder of The Salt Perspective, helping leaders at every level increase their impact. From Cape Town, Lisa Robin Wood is the middle manager coach. Her own leap into senior middle management sparked the confidence crisis that transformed her life and career. Today, she helps managers rebuild their confidence, sharpen their self-awareness, and thrive through GRIP Coaching's practical, high-impact development programs. Sally Foley-Lewis has spent over 20 years in the trenches and the boardroom, working with more than 20,000 managers across industries and continents. She's a global award-winning speaker, author, and educator who equips managers to be confident, capable, and courageous, and delivers the tools that lift performance fast. 3 experts, 1 shared passion, helping middle managers succeed where it matters most. Stay connected, keep developing, and keep leading from the middle.